Well, welcome back to the shop. Working on one of the last bigger pieces of kind of repair bodywork. As you can see in the background, depending on how all this stuff edited together, got the main chassis sitting pretty darn good. Roll bar was done a little bit ago off camera, so it's been blasted, painted, dunked in there just to keep it safe. Waiting for the paint to set up a little bit before we lock her down. But otherwise, that was kind of one of the main pieces of stuff that needed to be blasted and painted. And the last one is going to be this guy, which is the fiberglass rooftop. She's not too bad. Got a little bit of rusty in the back here. But otherwise the drip rail seems to be in pretty decent shape. We'll see when we blast it. We'll give her a quick walk around too. But otherwise, I don't think this will go too bad. We do have a new headliner to put in. This one held up pretty good for 45 years. Oh, buddy. It's starting to pull down in the corners. It's got some cracks where it just got brittle with age. So it is time to pull it out, put a new one in. And obviously this thing needs to get blasted and painted and put back to the color it's supposed to be. It's currently a gray and it needs to be a white. So just a quick run around of this guy. Like I say, the headliner held up pretty darn good over all the years. We did try and take care of it, but it is kind of a vinyl, and it just kind of gets hard and crusty over time. There's a couple clips in there where a few things dinged it, and then some of these are just where I think heat and time kind of shrink and expand, and it just cracks from being brittle. Same way with like this guy and this guy. Those are just age. It is starting to come down in the corners. If you peel around back, you can see, they kind of just glued it up to the fiberglass. There you can see the fiberglass roof and just kind of a foam backing on that guy like most headliners. Drip rail, rain gutter, whatever you want to call it. Pretty decent shape. There's one spot that I'm a little bit nervous about as we get her sandblasted. This is a long... if you remember that rear spreader bar kind of above the back ambulance doors, it's kind of where that door meets, and I think that was one of the crustier spots up on that spreader too. I don't think it's going to warrant pulling it all apart and drilling out the rivets because this is riveted on. You can kind of see, there's probably a better view. So that drip rail is riveted on. I'm hoping I can just blast it in place and kind of seam seal it and get her back on its way, but we'll see. There's one bolt that broke off right here. Again, this is kind of that main area of corrosion where that back hatch spreader caused problems. Otherwise, I think if you kind of wander around, I think the rest of the bolts actually did come out. I don't remember any other ones being broken off in there. That was the only problem child. I can feel them in there. Hopefully he's enough there that I can weld the nut on and kind of get him to crank out. We'll see. But luckily not too many of those to chase down. On the fiberglass side, this was painted gray, single stage, back in the 80s when it was redone the first time around. It was painted that metallic Ford gray. A couple spots where just things dinged it over the years. You catch it on the roof, same way up there. Luckily, none of them hurt the fiberglass. They just took off that single stage acrylic paint. So I think there's going to be a lot of sanding, but I think we'll be in pretty good shape with this guy. It's very dirty from sitting in the garage. Just kind of a lot of overspray on it right now. But otherwise, the eyebrow rivets are all pretty good, and the drip rail around the edge, like I say, is pretty good on the outside. It's just that one back corner that's got some funk that hopefully, like I say, on the outer part here even as well, it's not too bad. So I think as long as we blast it, and might have to skim in a little piece there, but hopefully not. But otherwise, yeah, pull the headliner out, get that all cleaned up and ready to go. Probably hit her with a light hit with a wire wheel just to knock off the old adhesive and make sure you get a good bond to the new guy. Oddly enough, it is still pretty well stuck. Like I say, it's mostly the corners that are starting to come down. So kudos to Toyota there on at least getting getting her in there pretty darn good. It would have been neat if it would have been able to keep it, but it's just gonna need to get swapped out. So we'll get that out, blast that drip rail, and then sand the top, and then we'll work on getting it primed and painted. And then I think I'm going to do the headliner last. Some people will do it first and then kind of keep it masked off. I'm going to try and get kind of up in these corners and stuff, so we'll leave her be, do her last. I've got enough stuff where I think we can flip it over and not worry about scuffing the paint. So not too worried there. The only other funny one that I don't know what it means if I tip you sideways, there are some numbers kind of punched or scratched in. Looks like a punch. 277080. I don't know if that's the part number for the hardtop and they just kind of cranked her in there or what. I'm assuming that's factory, but it is kind of a funny little setup they got there. Anywho, I'm going to put you guys in the rack, see if we can get this guy on the rack in some way, shape, or form, and start pulling her apart and seeing what we can do to make it look less like this and more like this, so it can go there. Onward. Well, got the headliner all peeled out, got the remnants of foam left, cleared out. Didn't want to hurt the fiberglass, so it was pretty light there. We'll try some sort of solvent to see if we can get the last of the glue off, although it is interesting to see how they did it at the factory. Basically you can see they brushed on a bunch of glue around the perimeter, kind of in the corners, all the way around, and then they did a splatter. Big old truck going by. They did a splatter through the middle, basically kind of light adhesive and then heavier on the edges. You know, typically when you use that like 3M in a can, it does come out kind of in this stringy splatter, and then yeah, they hit her heavy and spread her around to get a good coat on the edges. So interesting to see, at least. Rain gutter. I have to do some digging and reading. As I had the wire wheel out, I could just hit this one crusty spot. And yeah, she's gone right there. Same way here. This one's not, you could work with this. It's on the inside. It's not a real critical part. This one's out to the edge. So we may be splitting this guy. There's basically rivets all the way around. I think they're aluminum rivets, to be honest. So every 4 inches or so they've got a rivet, and they go through the other side and they pinch this fiberglass hardtop to this metal rail. You can obviously drill all those out. That'll split this rail off, then you can do kind of the metal work, get it fixed, get it all primed, and then dunk it back on. Got to do all the rivets again, and then you'd shoot the paint, which may be the route we're on. I'm going to do a little bit of digging tonight. It's getting to be close to dinner time here. It's kind of a good point to just stop and evaluate. The hardtop's not super critical. Do need to get her done before she gets cold, but we can run around on the rig with the top off for at least a few weeks for fun. But yeah, I'm going to dig a little bit, see what it takes to track down the right rivets, see what it takes to get these puppies drilled out, and what kind of tool you need to get them put back. They're not a real complicated rivet, and then the top ones do get basically seam seal or schmoot over them. So not super crazy, but it's a little bit of work that I was hoping we weren't going to need to go down, but in for a penny, in for a pound. Most likely we'll be splitting this rail off and getting her cleaned up. So we'll be back tomorrow probably, poking around on this. We'll see what we learn. We'll take her from there. Well, it's a few days later. Got her back outside. Sunny day again. A little cooler. Got the old fleece on. Summer's fading fast. Technically it's fall now. Ended up making a set of rivet pliers, similar to the 40 guy. His channel, he did the kind of same deal. Took a pair of vice grips, ground them down a little bit, put a punch reach on there, basically so you can get in under that gutter lip. So got those cranked out, picked up a pile of rivets and washers from McMaster Carr. They sent them on over. So I got a whole pile here. There's 250 in the box. I went around and counted. It was only 75, so I can screw up a lot. Did run a few through, a couple test pieces of the same thickness, kind of did some measurements. So they should do the deed. Ended up making a pretty nice rivet. So I think we're good to go there. I wanted to get that done before I started jamming this guy apart, because obviously it's kind of nice to know you can get it back together before you take it apart. This is obviously our main corner to look at, although I think when we blast it we'll see if we get any fun down here. Same kind of spot. It would be nice not to split it, but we're kind of in it to win it at this point. We'll get her split. That'll let me work this bolt as well. We can get that nice and cleaned up, and we can get rid of any funk up underneath. Can't really get up in there to paint real well, and it'll just be nice to have it really good and clean. It's not going to add that much work in the grand scheme of things, and we've, we're kind of in it that far, might as well do it right. So I'm going to get the die grinder out with a sanding disc on it. Should be able to just zip these with the sander, hit them with a punch, pop them out. Someone had a good point. If you hit them, knock them when they're hot, they come out of the fiberglass a little bit easier. So we're going to give that a try. We'll probably put her on time lapse for you. Oh, my knuckles are in the way. But that's the plan. A lot of just tedious little work. Should go pretty quick though, provided we get a rhythm going. Zip it with the roll lock, hit her with the punch, rinse, slather, repeat. Gonna put some tunes in my ears, put you guys in the rack, and get knocking. Well, that's all right. One down, 74 to go. See you in a bit. Yes, that's kind of why I wanted to peel it off. So this is our one bad spot here. You can see the old ventilation in the lip there. Not terrible. Should be pretty straightforward to patch. Basically bend a piece, seam it in. I don't think we have to go all the way over. I'll just pick a spot. Might have to repoke that hole. And might have to redo that captive nut anyway. We'll see when we blast it. Might be able to stay over. So I think this is okay. It just starts right about here. So it's just kind of a section from here to here. I think I just got some scrap steel that I could just throw in those cutting knives, break it over to get this 90-degree lip. We can kind of sand it to get it flat again. It's not like they didn't have seams in the lip to begin with, but this is kind of why I wanted to pull it off. There's no way I could have got up in here to get this cleaned up and painted. And now that it's off, I can hit it with the blaster, get it perfectly clean, hit it with the epoxy primer, and have a really nice, solid, buttoned up drip rail gutter. And we'll put down some new sealant, dunker on, got some Clecos. That'll be able to pinch it, and we can just go bang the rivets on. I'm going to try, move little fella. Oh. I'm going to try and leave this front lip on. He doesn't look too bad actually. And I'm going to try and hit it with the blaster in place. Just kind of block off the fiberglass so you don't hurt it. One of the problems when you pull this guy off is if you don't get that angle right, it won't sit on your windshield. You got to get this right. And the right way to do it would be to kind of tag the rail on, tag him on, and put it on the rig. But you really probably would have had to do that before you were painted. Just kind of one of those things. This one's actually pretty solid. There's no rust on it, no like deep rust. There's a little bit of surface. Otherwise, it's in pretty good shape. This one rivet on the end is a little loose. That's the only quandary I see with it. But I think what we'll be able to do is just put a press on the back side. You can see the rivet wiggle. None of the other ones do that. It's literally just this end guy. So we'll put a dolly block on the back, give him a little bit of love, and I think we'll be able to snug him up. Because the rest of it's pretty solid and stout, pretty clean. Should be able to hit that with the blaster, and then we'll get it with epoxy primer when we do the other stuff. So no worries there. I don't know what color it was underneath here originally. I'm assuming it was blasted white. Kind of under this lip it's black, which is kind of interesting. It's not the primer gray or anything like that. But anywho, should be able to get that cleaned up with the blaster. I may flip this feller over and start working the fiberglass first. We've got some warm weather coming again next week. It's going to be in the low to mid 70s, and I don't want this to sit out too long bare, even though it is pretty dry in the fall around here. But I think the plan's going to be flip this guy over, sand on that fiberglass to get him cleaned up. There is a, I'm curious to see how long it takes to get the enamel off, and either sand all that enamel off and get her back down closer to the glass, or at least get her smooth to where we can get a good coat on it. But we'll get that done first, then we'll blast these two parts, then we'll be ready to give it a lick of epoxy primer and be on our merry way, and then the headliner's going to be last. I don't think the metal work will take too long, so feeling all right there. Blasting this will be pretty quick. There's not a lot of loads and loads of paint on it, not a lot of deep corrosion. Looking at the backside, I don't think we'll find too many surprises. The closest would be in these front corners. Guessing it got a little bit of weepage around that front windshield, but so we'll have to watch sealing that up when we redo it. But I don't think anything is to the point of like failure or blasting through. Otherwise it looks pretty darn good, which is a good thing. Those are the clips for the dome light, whether you're in the which market. This would be the wrong side, I believe. Anyway, it's on both sides, so depending on which market you are, left-hand or right-hand drive, wire comes up from the windshield, runs back to the B pillar, and that's where your little switchy dome light is. Anywho, gonna move this rail awkwardly, and I'm gonna move this tub or fiberglass lip awkwardly, get it flipped over, break out the DA, put the old snorkel mask on, start sanding away some of it. I missed it on the camera, but so these are just a flat rivet on this side. Pretty simple. So before I flip the lid over, just grab the dolly block, use that on the back side, hold it flat on the rivet. Gave these guys a bump with the old body hammer, mushroomed them out a little bit extra. Now she's nice and snug, that rivet's nice and tight, it's not gonna spin on you. And just for safekeeping, came over and did it on this side as well. You know, the ends are where you're going to take the beating as far as flex. I'm not too worried about these middle guys, although I may give them one little wrap just to smooth them out or tighten them up. But otherwise, everything's nice and snug. I'm not too worried about that going anywhere, so we're just going to blast her in place. Alrighty, got her all flipped over. Obviously, she's got a coat of gray. I think it's an acrylic enamel, single stage. It's funny, you can kind of see back in the day it got painted blue once as well. So you can see some remnants of the old blue paint. I don't remember where exactly it landed. I know the lowers were blue to kind of for some of the rust repair originally. I think there might have been a stripe up top with a white roof, so the stripe might have been the gutter. I don't remember. The running joke, they called it the mail truck for a while when my sisters drove it to high school because it was white and blue and kind of boxy. Anyway, all in all, the fiberglass is actually in pretty good shape. There's one little ding on the inside layer, so this is two skins. There's a few dings here and there, but they didn't get the gel coat for the fiberglass basically underneath. They just knocked the gray paint off. So one was in the corner when we were ice fishing. I remember the roof of the ice shack clipped it, slid forward. One of those things. This one I'm not sure. I think it was just from when it was in storage. Probably clipped the garage door once or twice. Something slid across the top. Again, it's not into the fiberglass. It just railed that gray paint off, which is fine because I would like to get that off. Otherwise, there's obviously some crust in the gutter rail, so we'll work to get that cleaned up. But otherwise, all the rivets came off pretty clean. Not too worried there. It is going to get. I picked up some self-leveling seam sealer, so once we get the gutter back on, that'll fill in over these rivet holes, rivet heads. So not too worried there. But otherwise, obviously some crust to get out of the gutters here, which is another good reason to split it apart. You can kind of get this nice and clean. You can't do it with the gutter because there's a lip. It's hard to get in there. Now you can just kind of zing with the sander. Gently, of course. Gonna have to watch these rivets. They're all sitting pretty good. They will get a little of some light seam sealer just to make sure they're good and snug. But otherwise, again, same deal. Gray paint's getting a little crusty, but otherwise, the glass is in good shape. So I just got the DA sander. The lowest I have right now is 180 grit. We'll give that a go. It's probably better to be cautious anyway. I don't want to burn through too far on the fiberglass. Kind of want to just get the gray paint mostly gone because it is cracking, and I don't know if you can see that in it. Yeah, you can see she's cracking and peeling a little bit. So it's probably for the best to get all that off. And I don't know that stripper would be a great idea there either. We'll try the sander, see how she goes. She's not doing the deed, we'll revisit. So, same deal. I'm going to put some tunes in my ears and some tunes in yours. Put you in the rack. And going to do a lot of sanding because there's a lot of surface area there. But bit by bit, day by day. Well, a couple days later, time-lapsed a bit of the sanding, but there was a lot of sanding. 3 coats of paint on this guy. So it was the original off-white Cygnus, then it was painted blue at one point, and then it was painted that metallic gray. Got all 3 of those off, got her nice and clean. Went kind of slow and easy, didn't want to cut into the fiberglass, so tried to keep it pretty light. I think we did pretty good in that regard, got everything nice and clean, got the drip edge nice and clean, ended up using the mix of the, I did most of it with the DA, but based on the shape of that guy, getting this rounded rail wasn't particularly easy, so I ended up hitting that mainly with the kind of inline body sander. Worked pretty good for that, kind of kept you from getting too off kilter and making any hot spots or kind of digging in. And then ended up using the inline to just go over the whole thing and catch the last little bits. Just kind of gives you a nice flat surface. We will hit it with most likely epoxy primer, see how it looks, may hit it with surfacer, block sand it, and go from there. There are a few little spots, just based on how the fiberglass lays, of Cygnus left. You can see that kind of beige little picks here and there. Not really worth getting everything down, because at some point you're going to start to dig into the glass just to get rid of that little bit of paint. It's not going to hurt anything. We got most of it off. The vast majority is gone, which will give us a good base to adhere to. It was a little bit crackly underneath, so that's where I kind of just kept taking it off. But all in all, fiberglass is in pretty darn good shape, so pretty happy there. So that's going to sit for a little bit, and we're going to shift gears onto the gutter rail. I am glad I peeled it off. It is kind of crusty on the top side, so this would have been inside, up underneath, kind of where the headliner would come like this. So you're looking at the top. The bottom looks all right. Top, kind of like you would figure. It's hard to get paint up in there because it's a cavity. So it looks like they probably did some sort of like etch primer and then painted it from the bottom, and whatever got in there, and whatever didn't. So in this case, it'll be nice to blast it, and then we'll be able to do a nice epoxy primer all the way around. We'll probably have to chase these bolt holes, which is fine, but it'll be nice to have it all sealed up, cleaned up, buttoned up, and nice and clean. And then the only real thing we got to do is this rust repair over here. We'll see if any other ones shoot out when we blast it, but I think it is just going to be a pretty small strip here, probably 10 inches long by a couple in, and hopefully we can stay out of any of the holes and stuff. And if we can just do this, lip here, it'll keep the structure too, so we don't have to worry about getting out of shape or anything like that. So I think this should be pretty quick. The only real question when you're done with it is just getting the last of the rivet holes in, although there's one here and one here, which I think are it. So technically we got a pretty good idea of those even. But you can kind of see a little bit better the red primer where the fiberglass lip sat with a little bit of foam. So yeah, they had some sort of just base oxide primer, and then over the years that just kind of wore away. You can get a little better view up here, I guess. But yeah, it's nothing serious. It's just surface corrosion, but it is nice to be able to blast that, clean that up. There's no way you were going to get that clean with that on the hardtop. So I'm going to get everything set up for the blaster. It's just the portable bucket blaster. Can't really fit that in a cabinet. You know, it's 7 feet long. So I'm going to get the tarps out, get the bucket blaster out, get the compressor all ready to go, and we'll give her a zip with the old bucket blaster. Still waiting for that last part that's going to get blasted. This may be it. The only other thing left is the rear door hardware, like the handles and stuff that are inside that pewter gray. I think they're all right, but we'll see. But yeah, it will be a happy day when there's no more parts to be sandblasted. Anywho, enough yakking. I'm going to get everything set up, get the guys in the rack, and get this guy cleaned up. Then we can see what we got to do for metalwork. Well, there it is, all cleaned up. Made her all the way around. Obviously, the spot we knew about, there's a big hole right there. We're going to have to patch. There were a couple little pinholes. One right there. And I think one kind of up around the corner here. Right about here. We may be able to just fill those in with the TIG because they are pretty small. It's just basically a little pinhole. This back corner is going to need to get cut out, but I got to move everything out of the garage to do the metalwork, and it's about 6 o'clock. So I think that's going to be dinner time for today, and we'll pick it up tomorrow morning, get the metalwork done, and then while everything's out of the garage, we can get this rail epoxy primered, let that dry overnight. I did also get the little brow lip that's riveted on. It's on the other side of the top. That got blasted as well. So between the two tomorrow, if we can get the metalwork done and flip this guy over, we can give that a lick of epoxy primer on its own while everything's nice and clear. And then we can give the rail a lick of epoxy primer, let those both dry, and then the next day start riveting it together, put some sealer and all that jazz. So I think we got a plan. I think we're making some progress, but I think that's also where it's going to sit for today. We'll pick her up tomorrow. Well, it is a new day. I am fed, and there is more time to work. So here's the rail all cleaned up, a little better view. So this is on the passenger side above the rear window. There's a couple little pinholes here where it corroded through. Obviously there's a little bit of pitting there. I don't think it's enough to warrant kind of cutting it out and redoing that whole lip. It's going to get, it's kind of where that seal sits anyway. So I'm going to try zapping that with the TIG and some filler rod, smoothing it out to get the worst of it, and then we'll give it a little bit of probably fiberglass resin just to fill that in. There's one little one on this back corner as well, kind of the same deal. That one's even a little further inboard. You can kind of see where the drip rail actually is. Again, I think I'm just going to kind of put a brass block or a copper block behind it, hit it with a little bit of TIG filler and smooth it out, and then we'll give it a little bit of filler to clean that out. This is the bad section. Obviously she's got literal holes there, so we're going to have to nibble this guy out. I do have a strip of scrap laying there that'll do the deed. I'm hoping to leave the vertical gutter lip just to have a nice clean edge. I think we can kind of seam it down the line here. And just do the bottom face. As we get into it, if we need to, we can. But really, most of the rail is pretty solid. There's a little bit of a kind of corrosion in this part, but it really doesn't go into the rail. It's kind of right on that radius. So I think as long as we're careful, we can kind of do that in and then hit her with the die grinder to give us that kind of rounded edge. And I think we'll be okay, and then it's just kind of a nice small patch here. Won't change any dimensions, and everything will look kind of nice and smooth. And kind of like the other side, although a little bit better. So this is the driver's side, everything's upside down. There's one real tiny pinhole here, where again I'm just going to put the copper block behind it, hit it with a little bit of TIG filler, and we'll smooth the rest of that out. Gasket sits pretty wide. There isn't a big lip on the outer edge once you bolt those sail panels on. Otherwise, the rest of it's pretty good. You do have to watch handling it. This front isn't particularly sturdy. This is a very awkward piece to handle on your own. It's a little bit too wide to grab your mitts on it, so you're kind of always walking it around a little bit. There is a little bit of a curve in the, kind of a pinch in the front. I will have to hit that with the dolly block and the body hammer just to straighten that out a little bit once we get her closer to done. But otherwise, that's the plan. I'll get you guys in the rack, get the welder out. I think I'm going to start with the TIG stuff, just because the TIG welder is what it's set up as. Get those couple holes filled, and then we'll start cutting material and get this fixed and see if we can get this stuck bolt out. Maybe able to take her out the other side. There's a little bit more to work with. My guess says we can weld the nut on that side and bring her all the way through because this side's nice and clean. Should be able to suck her on through. Anywho, let's get set up and get to work. Hey. Yeah, we'll pop the old garage doors back open, so a little more noise, but a little more breeze, which is nice. It's a nice fall day. Ended up having to drill this guy out and then kind of chase it. For whatever reason, that guy was stuck. Tried it from both sides. You could even grip her with the old vice grips and it was not going to budge, so whatever. One nice thing about having the rail off is you can kind of do some of that stuff a little bit easier. Ah! Choo! But anyway, time to start patching this guy in. How long are these guys between each other? Can I do this? And I'm sure it is metric. Granted, not too big of a deal. I can. Oh man, my nose is just going. At least 98. That is bizarre. 100 outer to outer. Is that it? That is a very strange measurement. One would expect it to be metric, given it's everything on this is metric. But yeah, it's like 98 millimeters. What a weird distance. They're all the same though, so that's easy enough. Yeah, they're all the same running down. Debating just how far to go over. Obviously, if you go over this distance, you get a little bit more of this crusty out. And then we just got two rivet holes to deal with, which is fine. They're all the same. Should be able to make a nice pattern. And really, once you put her on the lid, you can drill those out again as well, because everything else will seat it. So I think that's what we're going to do is go to about here. Just to get rid of that last bit of crust. And we come back to get the trouble back here. Sweet. So I'm going to go back to here. Probably half up. Which is fine. And then we'll leave this rail. Could actually leave in a little bit and make a notch. That at least gives me a reason. That'll just help me stiffen up this outer lip, otherwise you can get a little bit of a wonky wave to it. Not like it's super complicated shape. I think that'll do. I do need air though. Well, that'll do all right. So we got a piece left from something. Doors, hardtop, I don't know. But he should be pretty close. So we'll get him nipped off square. And we can start nipping that off. Actually, should use this side. Yeah, my nose is just running today. T-O-P, even though that's the bottom. This is the bottom of the rail, but it's the top for what we're working on. Yep, let's nibble that off. Well, got her all cut out. That will do. Gotta get the old clamperoonies in the magnets. Might need to give it a little more space just to have that panel gap. Okay, I could probably do a little bit of straightening up. But I think we're in business. We'll see if these guys can nab it or not. Might be a little bit snug. Which would be nice. But... That's not too bad. We'll get a few tacks in it. We'll have to flex a little bit on this side just to get it lined up where you want it. But I think we'll be all right. And you are almost out of battery. Oh, air compressor bleeding off. So there she is, all patched in. A little bit of finishing work to do. Got to clean up some of the welds. But all in all, pieced back in pretty good. Ooh, got to sneeze again. Oh. Ah, choo! I'm going to keep working that in. It's not perfect, but this is all going to sit kind of under that rubber gasket as well, so not too concerned. Kind of erred to the side of leaving a little bit more metal than trying to get it nice and smooth. I'd rather have more structure and a little bit ugly under that gasket than nice and pretty, but not as strong as it could be. It is a patch at the end of the day, but I think we'll be all right. I got to poke those other rivet holes back in. I think I'll dig out some thicker paper, kind of punch 4 or 5 across and then slide it on down and get the 2 holes that we're missing. It'll be nice to do it before we put epoxy primer on it, just so everything's nice and sealed up. But otherwise, that's kind of it for the plan. After that, I'll take it outside quick and hit it with the portable blaster, just to make sure everything's nice and clean and get off any of the lingering. It's a good one to knock off any of the lingering welding splinters, kind of those little beads. And it just gives a nice, good bite. It's a nice finish for painting. And then we'll get her, probably bring it back when we got her hung up and ready to shoot at least 1 coat of epoxy primer on it. It's going to get another coat once it's all assembled anyway, so we don't really need to coat it, double coat it a whole lot, just to get a nice finish on everything on this guy. Kind of watching the weather. It was supposed to be dry out, but no, they're saying there's kind of a band of rain blowing through, and the poor little 40's hanging around outside without top on it. So if rain starts coming through, I don't want the garage all tied up as a paint booth. So we may have to hold tight and grab a snack, wait for the rain to blow through. It's a real little itty bitty kind of band of showers. And then we can turn this puppy into a paint booth, get that set. That'll let it dry overnight, and then we can kind of use all the Clecos and the Sikaflex and tie all that together, and get back on the paint. So I'm going to get back to metalwork. We'll watch the weather, and we'll probably bring you back when we're ready to paint. Well, we got her all hung up. You can probably hear the old fan rattling in the background. Everything should be good to go for epoxy. I did end up poking those couple rivet holes, just kind of made a measuring stick and ran around down. Man, I gotta sneeze again every time. Achoo, there we go. But it's all hung up. Should be all right. We're going to give it another coat anyway, so there'll be a little bit of a pick there around that grommet hole, but it'll be all right because it's going to get another coat. Otherwise, that should work for what we need to do here. Hit this with the degreaser as well. We're going to give this a little bit of time to dry off. The fiberglass holds it a little bit longer, but otherwise just need to get rid of the old sandblasting residue. Otherwise, got nice clean metal there. You can see that front visor piece. It is nice and snug. I did snug up these rivets basically with a dolly block on the bottom and gave them a couple wraps with the hammer. Just kind of re-mushroomed them out a little bit for the couple that were slightly loose. But otherwise, that visor is nice and tight. I'm not too worried about that little bit there that I can't get. It was in good shape. No real deep corrosion or anything like that. Just kind of grotty old paint. So we're going to let that ride. When you talk to people, if you take that off, you can get the angle goofy, and just all sorts of fun. That isn't worth pulling that guy apart. I do have to remember to fix this one little pick in the liner. I don't think it'll even matter, but it'll be good just to tighten that up. We can do that after paint. Otherwise, gave it a quick sand to clean off the rail while we got everything nice and clean, and hit it inside as well. It's kind of funny, you can see all the little, I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, all the little pockets where the two kind of, must be where they mate the two together, because it is double seamed. You can see the rails that go in the middle too to give it some structure. But otherwise, that's pretty clean. We'll give it one more lick with probably some acetone before the headliner, but got most of the headliner off. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a good surface to bond to. Made sure to get the corners nice and clean in places like that. The liner does run up on this lip, so I'm not too worried about adhesion there. It'll be fresh, clean paint. But gonna let the garage air out a little bit. That's why the fan's running. We're gonna close up the doors, leave a little crack. Just let all the dust settle because we did make kind of a bit of a mess this morning between the metalwork, cleaning up the fiberglass top, and then blowing out the garage. Just made a poof cloud. So we're gonna let that sit for a bit. I'm gonna go get a little bit of a snack. Keep an eye on that rain. One last chance for it to blow through. And then we're going to mix up some of our epoxy primer and give it a shoot. I may just bring it back after that. That stuff's pretty gnarly, and it'd be nice to keep the camera out of it for a change. Should be a quick hit. It's just a little squirt across the front, squirt around the edges. Then we should be able to let that dry for like an hour, and then we might even be able to get lay it on the hard top and seal it in the clecos to snag it together overnight, let that dry, and then we can jam on the rivets tomorrow, which would be nice because I figured we'd be off a day there. But I'm going to let everything sit, be back in a bit, and hopefully with some epoxy primer on here. New day, sunlight, I like it. Did a little work this morning. Basically filled in a lot of the pitting in a few little spots. Just gave it a little bit of body filler and a sand. Obviously burned through some of the primer. Kind of knew that would happen. This is by far not flat. You know, as you crimp these bolts down and stuff, it gets some wave to it. It's not really meant to be super flat. It's going to have a big old gasket on it. Just wanted to kind of smooth things out to get a good seal. And it is going to get another coat of primer still. So it didn't really sweat burning through the primer in some of the spots. Just kind of, it's easier to rip through it and touch it up than kind of worry about it on something like this that's just not a smooth part. But all the kind of pits and picks are filled in, so that'll be nice, give a nice smooth finish for that rubber mating gasket. Just kind of touch it up a little bit. The eyebrow visor is painted underneath as well. Oh, buddy. Yeah, so he's got a nice fresh coat of primer, as does the fiberglass on that front lip, which will help kind of seal that all in. That does get paint. So we're sitting pretty good there. I'm gonna keep an eye on these rivets. I'm curious to see how well they seal up with just the epoxy primer and some of that stuff. You know, we're gonna get a few coats of product on this guy because it's gonna get primer, probably a surfacer, and then sealer base clear. So between all that, I'm not too worried about those rivets leaking at this point because they were okay to begin with. And they'll just kind of get sealed up with all those layers. So I think we'll be okay. So next step is going to get this kind of all bundled back together. Well, Mike from the future, all the work, prep work there took a little bit longer than expected. Kind of ran into a few things that we didn't plan on. So all the footage took a little bit longer than expected. So this one's sitting at about an hour right now. So that's probably where we're gonna call it for this go. Everything's prepped and all that prep work. It was a good thing to do. You know, she'll be good to go. No worries. But next time we'll be able to get her all buttoned back together with the rivets, get that rail back onto the fiberglass, and then she'll be ready for a coat of paint and polish. And then that'll get the fiberglass cap done. So yeah, a little bit more of a handful than I expected. Thought it would be one of the easier pieces, a little more work, but like I said before, kind of we're in it to win it, so no point taking shortcuts now on the last bits. But next time we'll get her all assembled and painted, and she'll be ready to go. And then from there, it's basically working on the hardtop sides, getting the glass back in, getting the doors reassembled and everything back on as far as the hardtop goes. So that's what we're going to call it for today. Keep an eye out for part 2 on getting it back together. But thanks for riding along, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you.